If you are a publisher with a direct sales team and you change your prices on your rate card too often, then you run the risk of confusing your own sales team and your advertisers. However, if you don't change them enough, then you slowly drift out of sync with the market and you leave money on the table. So, what is the right balance? And just to be clear, I'm talking about situations where you're updating the prices on the rate card, not redesigning the entire rate card. Structural changes usually only occur every few years, whereas pricing changes tend to occur much more frequently. In practice, there are a couple of ways that teams approach this, and I'm going to address the more uncommon one first because while it does exist, I want to get it out of the way. One approach that you can do to update your rate cards is very mechanistic. And basically, you might have a rule in place, and the rule might go something like this. If my sell through rate is over 80% across my site, I need to raise my prices. If it is under 50%, I need to lower my prices. The advantage of a rule like this is that it's very easy to implement. You can have a rule, you can give it to an algorithm, you can give it to an AI agent, and it implements the changes. And I have seen rules like this operate in the real world. I don't usually recommend them for a few reasons. The first is that you run the risk of whipsawing your sales team and your advertisers. If your thresholds are slightly off, you can create changes more quickly than the market can absorb them. The second is that the rules may react to the wrong signals. And I'll give you an example. If you might see a drop in your sell-through rate because you had a lot of turnover on your sales team and your execution weakened for a particular period of time, that doesn't necessarily mean that your prices are wrong or need to be changed. Third, and most importantly, these rules are not grounded in changes in the underlying value of your product. Pricing decisions should reflect how advertisers value your inventory in the market, and that type of signal is not normally captured in rules-based systems. So the other way the publishers update their rate cards is on a fixed schedule. And to be clear, this is by far the more common approach. This is largely because it is easier to operationalize and easier for the sales teams and buyers to understand. It aligns well with planning cycles, with budgeting, and with the ways most organizations run their business. For a small publisher who is just starting out, they may put a rate card out there and change the prices after a year or two when they get to a certain scale. And in general, the cadence tends to increase with the maturity of the organization and the amount of data that they have available. However, there are some limitations to this approach. The biggest is that it can become calendar driven rather than market driven. Markets don't necessarily move on an annual schedule, and if you are only updating prices once a year, you can miss meaningful changes in demand, competitive positioning, or how your product is valued. In practice, many companies say that they update on a fixed schedule, but they might only make partial changes, or they may carry the assumptions forward from previous periods, and over time, this can lead to a gradual drift away from where the prices might or should actually be. So I usually encourage my clients to update at least on an annual cycle. I have seen examples of monthly and weekly updates, but in general, that's going to be too fast. So what's the Goldilocks timing here? For most publishers, it's going to be a quarterly review. That doesn't mean that you have to change all of your prices every quarter, but I encourage teams that I work with to at least go through the process every quarter of assessing whether anything has changed. You can think of the timing of your rate card as similar to the heartbeat of the organization. It sets the rhythm of your pricing, your yield analysis, and how your sales team operates. If that cadence is too fast, you create instability. If it is too slow, you become unresponsive to the market. So it's important to get it right. And just like a real heartbeat, that cadence may change over time. A smaller or early stage organization may operate at a different rhythm than a more mature one. Because I am the yield doctor with a PhD and not a medical degree, I'm only going to go so far with this analogy, but the core idea holds. The timing of your pricing changes is what sets the pace for how an organization responds to the market. At the time that you go through the list of all of your pricing inputs and run your models, you need to look at those inputs. And so I'm going to link here to a separate video I created on the list of pricing signals that a team should look at. But to give you a sense for the examples, one might be if you see that a competitor is making changes to their pricing, that may require that you respond in kind. A second precipitator of the need to make changes is if there's a significant change in the market. For example, a regulatory change or a legal change in the industry that is affecting demand. Often in digital advertising, we find that one quarter can be significantly stronger than others. And for many, it tends to be Q4 when the holiday shopping occurs. But you can often see examples of niche sites that have spikes in demand around other times of the year. And they may choose to have different rate cards during those quarters. The variation in demand across different quarters further reinforces the fact that you should be reviewing your pricing on a quarterly basis. I am James Deaker. I am the yield doctor. I work with my clients on issues and problems just like this to help them make more money from their digital assets. Thanks for watching.